It was a complicated business for me because I got trading involved with it. If I never would have traded, I would be a lot wealthier than I am today. It put me on pause in the business as well, meaning you're not coming back until you raise funds.
Welcome, everybody, to the Warrior Podcast. Today, we're continuing our trading floor series. We're here with one of my dearest friends, Peter Fasano. He's going to tell you some life stuff and how he made it to the very high of the trading floor peak. And with that said, my dear friend, Peter Fasano, welcome to the Warrior Podcast.
Good morning, Frank. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure.
I just want to start off by saying that I know you've had a rough year, and I want to thank you for thinking of me, during your troubles and bringing me on here.
Yeah, I appreciate that, brother. I appreciate that. And you being here is actually helpful for me.
Okay,
so
good.
I've known you for quite a while. I'll just give the audience a backstory. When I was in the trading pit, I stood next to Jimmy Fasano, who is Peter's brother. And then I got to know most of the Fasano brothers. I don't want to say crazy family, but crazy family. Really good stuff. And Peter's going to take us through from the beginning. Tell me a little bit about the childhood and the family and all that stuff.
Yeah, sure. So you stood next to Jimmy and Michael.
Correct.
And so I'm going to go back about, 30 or so years from before that. I was the youngest of 5 boys. So I was 6 out of 7.
So 5 boys and a sister?
5 boys and 2 girls.
Okay.
I have a younger sister, Gina, and our older sister is Helen. So we grew up, my father was in the pie business, very successful man and very classy guy, well-dressed every day and blah, blah, blah. So we grew up, my mother is a sweetheart. She raised 7, like you said, she raised 7 maniacs. And I mean, I could say it like that. The girls were maniacs too, but in a good way. We weren't out killing people. We were just out having fun. So my parents were very good parents, I would say. And the household basically ran like this. My dad did everything outside the house, and my mom took care of the house.
Can I jump the gun with you? Your father, I'm old enough to remember Fasano Pies. They were everywhere. He had a fleet of trucks.
Yep.
Right? And
38 states.
Yeah, I don't want to jump the story there, but he took the shot at being the next Entenmann's, right?
So I mean, we were pretty big business. He was doing close to $60 million a year.
Holy cow!
In the 70s, that's when a pie was $1.25 or something. My grandfather started the company in 1946, and then my dad took the reins sometimes in the 70s, and my uncle Larry ran the inside of the operation until my brother Michael took it over. We're originally a Beverly family, South Side family. My mom and dad grew up there, and I grew up there for about 3 or 4 years, and then we moved to Naperville for a short time. Moved to a place called Crest Creek, where my parents built a house right on the golf course, right on it used to be the 12th hole, which it had a par 3 with a pond in the back. So it'd be like, everything happens with water, right? So, you're out playing golf and mess around in your backyard. And then in the winters, that's where we learned how to skate. I was a little kid, so learned how to skate right in the backyard. And then in 3rd grade, we moved to Hinsdale. And I went to a school by the name of St. Isaac Jogues. And that school really formed my childhood and beyond with the guys that I met and that I hung out with, and they're still my buddies today. But we had, without a doubt, one of the craziest classes probably ever.
It was a Catholic school, right?
St. Isaac Jogues in Hinsdale. Yeah.
So I was born and raised Catholic, and I didn't go to a Catholic school, but because all you guys around me in the pit pretty much were all Catholic school boys, you guys were bigger sinners than everybody.
No doubt.
I mean, insane. It's like, what?
No
You're
doubt.
supposed to be
We just
praying to Jesus every day, and you guys were wild.
I'm not, we'll get into that later, but I wasn't a daily mass goer or anything like that. So anyways, grade school was, was an absolute riot. Family life and everything. My dad was doing very well at work, and my mom was raising raising us. And then, you know, come summertime, we would go to Grand Beach, Michigan. And that was a whole nother set of friends. You know what I mean? Big family, big Irish families, and a few Italian families here and there, but mostly Irish, Southside Irish.
So you went from Beverly to Hinsdale, right? But you kept all your ties with the Beverly people.
100%.
Because I know from the trading pit, like all you guys from childhood, you all knew each other and hung out and stuff, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. So we did a short stint in Naperville too, maybe like a 4 or 5 year stint. I don't know exactly. I was a little kid. Well, I know because I went to kindergarten through 2nd grade out there. So we probably did 5 years. The family joke is that was too far of a drunk drive for my dad, you know, from downtown, Naperville was. So he just cut it in half and moved to Hinsdale. That's a joke, by the way. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
So anyways, growing up in Hinsdale, I'm speaking for myself, right? I was a younger guy growing up in Hinsdale, and I have a couple older brothers, Michael and Joey, who were like, the real deal. They were big guys. They were great athletes. People respected them. People feared them. And, you know, I was under them. So, you know, that's how I learned to play sports, is running away from those guys. I mean, realistically, you'd be in the bad, you know, Michael was a sweetheart, but Joe, there was no mercy.
Is he the oldest?
Joe's the oldest of the family. Yeah,
Okay.
Joe, Helen, Michael. You'd be coming in for a layup or something, and you're 75 pounds. You're going to get pounded, and you got to expect it. You know what I mean? Joe, what, you know, whatever. You know what I mean? I'll never forget. I was in like 3rd or 4th grade, and we were at Burns Field, a little park in Hinsdale. We were playing hockey, and my brother Joe, somehow, I don't think he shot the puck, but a puck deflected up and smacked me right in the mouth. You know, like 4, 5, 6 stitches worth, which is a lot in the lips. You know what I mean? And Joe's like, "Come on, let's put." You know, there wasn't even a genuflect. You know what I mean? Put some snow. You know, like the old thing. Put some snow on it, you'll be fine. So, you know, played for another hour or two, and you know, bring home to mom. Mom's like, I think we better go to the hospital. You know what I mean? So anyways, the memories I have of my childhood are all pretty good, pretty positive. Even into my adult years, where me personally, I turned into a little bit of a handful, as you would say. Never gotten any law trouble. The only time skirmishes, like for stupid stuff, like, like driving tickets and stuff like that, but no DUIs, no blah, blah, blah. But there were plenty of like accidents and, dangerous stuff, like fast car driving and, hitting trees and, not normal stuff. But, our family had a way of getting out of things as well.
Oh, it's a big network. Your dad was powerful. And
very big network. I always say growing up in Hinsdale, it's a beautiful community, blah, blah, blah. But we grew up around owners and CEOs of companies. You know what I mean? And so like if you needed something or whatever, or blah, 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 it could be your neighbor, And so anyways, got through my teen years. I was a pretty good hockey player.
Could I pause you right there?
Yeah.
So you guys are, I know Michael and Jimmy were hockey players.
Yes.
And both of them credited you with you were the hockey stud of the family. There was no question about it, but like you could skate like nobody else. And is that because you were trying to stay away from getting steamrolled from your brothers, right?
Yeah, I mean Michael was quick and fast. So when I was growing up, Michael was now he's like a 200-pound guy. He was like 225. And, but Michael is besides my mom, Michael is my ultimate protector in life.
Yeah.
I mean, he protected me a few times from somebody.
And he has also the reputation that I hear from the Fasanos and the families who know you. Michael was a tough.
Yeah, he was a street
tough
guy.
Like this,
yeah.
Tough.
He had a left hand. I've witnessed it a few times. I've never been on the other end of it, thank God. Brother stuff.
Right.
But Yeah, Michael was, Michael was a good guy.
I love having him stand in front of me in the pit. I couldn't believe that this guy was so tough, but he's so even keeled most of the time. You would never know.
Correct.
But you look at him, you could tell he's
that was
a
the
freaking gorilla. Right?
That was the new Michael.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I would say in his late 20s, he was running a big operation at the bakery, and several hundred employees, and he decided to change his attitude in life, and started reading a lot, and whatever. But Mike is the guy that if it's 2 a.m, you call him up. There's no doubt about that, and I have.
And I'm going to tell you my other thing that I wanted to cover, but I'll say it now. Your brotherhood, you guys, like you're all you're battlers. You'll go to war, and a lot of times with each other, but when you're in trouble, you guys are there for each other.
Correct.
So
yeah,
that's been very inspiring to me, and I'm an only child.
Yeah, my brothers, we may not all get along, but if there's a problem, we're all going to be in the same room. Even then, there might be conflict in the room, but we're all there.
Yep.
Right? For the same cause, which is a good thing.
You've told me a couple times with you and Jimmy, you've used this terminology. He read me the riot act, and I deserved it. Like you said, you said something like that. One of your things that happened, but that's good. It's a good thing. I never met
Jimmy and I were the closest in age, and he was only a year older. He had measles or something when he was like in first grade or kindergarten. They held him back because he was out of school for like 3 months. So we were a year apart in school. So Jimmy and I, we have a storied relationship, good or bad or whatever you want. Yeah, I'm sure you saw a little bit of it.
I lived next to you guys in the pit for a while, so I saw a little bit of that.
So, Jimmy's he's just a different person than I am. You know what I mean? But he's got the same heart as I do.
Hell yeah.
Like I said, we had a all around great childhood. And a lot of fun, a lot of just a lot of crazy kid stuff. And, like up in Grand Beach, you just go out and, you leave at 8, 9 in the morning and you don't come home till you're hungry, and your parents never worried about you, and you're out playing golf or playing baseball or, on the beach or maybe on the boat, on certain days with Lake Michigan, you got to watch out. But just a pretty fun childhood.
What did your mother feed that?
Oh my God.
That mob.
My mom had hot meals, first of all, every single morning for everybody. And let's just stick to school. So like on a school day, she'd feed everybody hot meals. And then you'd go to lunch and you would be the talk of the town. I mean, you'd be like, people would be trading you stuff. We'd get like, remember those boxes that were kind of not singular, but they were, like for 3 people, like of, Cheez-Its and stuff like that. Like they were this big. You'd have those in your lunches and full meals and an apple and, maybe like a piece of chocolate cake. We were in the bakery business. Or my dad had these little pies and these pound cakes, you know what I mean? She'd shove them, because our freezers were stocked.
Did you ever see The Breakfast Club?
I have.
Remember when the wrestler's unpacking
That's
his
what
lunch
kind of
bag?
lunch I had practically. I mean, I didn't have 3 sandwiches, but I mean, that's what kind of bag I had.
Yeah.
My lunch bag was bigger than my book bag.
That's hilarious.
Because I didn't study much, just to be honest. I just did enough to get through and, probably cheated a lot.
And then what kind of dinners would she make? What were some of her famous dinners?
She, pot roasts and, Salisbury steaks and pork chops smothered in,
oh my God, you guys ate like royalty.
We did, yeah. There wasn't a lot of mac and cheese, you know what I mean? One of the and Sunday dinners, I mean, we're always like, prime rib and
wow.
Steaks on the grill and
that's
stuff,
why you guys
with
are
all the trimmings.
You're all foodies. You all appreciate fine food, you guys. Yeah.
But like Sunday afternoons in Grand Beach, a lot of us played golf on Sunday mornings. You'd come back to the house. We had a beautiful house. And the girls would already be cooking, and then my brother Joe would get involved, and we'd have these monster meals. Like I'd say around noon or 1 on a Sunday afternoon, with the whole family, eggs, Italian sausage, breads, and then it was like a whole ordeal. I mean, because, when there's just a normal family, there's 9 of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So otherwise there was always 3 or 4 or 5 other people. Just because someone was sleeping on the couch in the morning or whatever, you know what I mean? Stuff happens. Or girlfriends, you know what I mean? Or boyfriends, whatever. A lot of girlfriends. And everybody just, we had huge tables and, you fix your own plate up at the counter on a day like that. But like if you got put on the toast duty, like I ate, it was brutal. You know what I mean? It's like, you got to toast like 2 loaves of bread. And then the butter is hard. And my dad would be like, come on, you gotta, even down to that, my dad would be like, you got to do it this way, blah, blah, blah,
So with the Italian thing, you had the open door policy. You'd be hanging out with a buddy. Yeah, come on over for dinner, whatever. It was like anybody was welcome.
Literally open door 24/7.
Yeah.
A lot of times you'd come home, there'd be friends of yours there eating.
Friends.
No exaggeration. Yeah. You know what I mean? Hey,
I love it.
You got any chocolate pie? Yeah, we're going to your house, whether you were there or not. So
I love it.
A lot of my memories come from Grand Beach. A lot of them, good and bad. We would pack up and leave the last day of school, and wouldn't come back to the next day of school unless there was a wedding or a funeral.
Oh wow,
true story. And, my mom, they had their bridge clubs, and the kids all had, in this community, Grand Beach, we had like a clubhouse. It was called a community house. But, like one night a week, they'd have bingo, and then they'd have, in the middle of summer, you'd have a Halloween party. And then the adults on Saturdays would have these monster they would always, do it around a golf outing. They'd have like a 2-ball or whatever. Mm-hmm. And everybody would dress up they'd have a Mexican night or a Halloween night or a, whatever night. They'd all dress in costumes and they'd play the 2-ball, and you'd get paired up with another lady, as a guy, and go out and play. It was usually a 9-hole event. And I remember my father being the president of the social club for a couple of years. So we have to go out and set up all the beverages on the course, and as kids, we're like chugging brews, and so it was just fun, and it was a real community. You know what I mean? Not a lot of people had pools back then because we had a full beach, and it was a community. You know what I mean? You go down, if you're doing something wrong, like whatever, you're going to get cracked in the head by somebody else's dad, like out of the blue. And you're not going home. You're not going home to tell your dad.
Yes. Because you would be embarrassed, and your dad would crack you in the head too.
Would beat you up worse. There's no doubt about that.
That's old school, baby. We don't have that anymore.
Yeah, so that's the way Grand Beach was. I got a funny story about my parents when I was a little kid. We moved out of our one house in, technically we sold it to the Stone family. They took possession of it Christmas of 75. Okay. So it had to be pre this. My dad had a party, and open door policy in Grand Beach was, you could walk into somebody's house at midnight and start drinking, from wherever. It didn't matter. And so they had a party, but they were rocking and rolling. And this gentleman by the name of Dan Moyerty, who was hilarious, and he knew how to play instruments. And he had one of those things on a stick, Frank, with like the 7 different instruments on it. You'd bounce it. It would, it'd have a horn on it, and it'd have a drum and a harmonica. And it had like 7 different things, you know what I mean? And a stick, but he knew how to play the piano too. And one night they wanted to bring the piano out in the street from my dad's house, from my family's house. It wouldn't fit. So they took the door frame off. Literally took the door frame off. And, this was a thought process for a bunch of adults, you know what I mean? And bring it out to the middle of the street and, had the party in the street.
That's awesome.
I remember the door being rebuilt the next week by this gentleman by the name of Bill Bear, who was a handyman in the neighborhood. And he fixed everything for everybody. Yeah.
That's real good
So
memories.
as a kid, you know what I mean? You wake up and you're like, what the hell happened to the door? You know what I mean? There's a lot of mornings like that. You know, as I got older, I went to a few different high schools. I went to Bennett Academy for a short time, and then I went to Nazareth. So there was about 14 boys in front of us at Nazareth. So I'm a freshman, you know, I'm who I am, right? So,
which is a lot.
We're courting, you know, or I should say I was courting juniors and seniors. I mean, put it this way, the girls at Nazareth started showering when we started coming to school. You know what I mean? Because now they got boys in the school. It was an all-girls school. So I had a riot there again. And that exposed me. Now, I was a suburban guy. And Beverly, I know a little bit about, right? From going back and blah, blah, blah. So that's way more city than Hinsdale, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, they got the numbered streets and they're all straight,
yeah,
blah, blah, blah. And Nazareth exposed me to city kids. And, you know, I've never even been to practically a McDonald's in my life before this. Hot dog stands. We didn't have any hot dog stands, beef stands, stuff like that. You know what I mean? So I got friendly with a couple of guys. This one gentleman, Marcel Santiago, his family's like in the Crips or whatever, grew up on 26th Street. And I'm like, oh, this stuff is kind of cool. You know what I mean? I learned real quick not to mess with that. But like there was city buses coming, and I'm not trying to be a snob. I'm just telling you what I knew and didn't know. City buses coming and dropping kids off at the school, right? You know, I've never been on a bus. And so I thought it was good. So I lasted 2 full years there, or a year and 3/4. And at Bennett, I didn't get kicked out, but there's no way I was going to make it. I don't know how to study. I still don't. You know, I didn't open up a book. I think I got like a 40 on one of my physics tests. And they're like, Pete, I think it's time. I think it's time you take a little breather, you know? But Nazareth, I did okay. I got like C's, you know what I mean? And I was already playing hockey for Hinsdale Central and a team called the Franklin Park Jets. And I was going to Nazareth. And the one year, I could say it now, whatever, I was playing under my cousin John's name, right? And the coach from LT was, I think his name was Lou. Some of the guys that see this will know. I forget his name. It was a long time. Lou, he was coming over to our house and begging my dad, you got to send this kid to LT, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I live in Hinsdale, you know what I mean? And my dad's like, well, I don't know how that'll look. He's like, whatever, we'll get you a post office box or whatever, you know what I mean? And my dad was a pretty straight shooter, you know? So he's like, you know, it is what it is, blah, 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 you know, you're going to do this. So I was already playing for Central. My dad figured, well, I don't know if he put this, but I figured my parents were already paying taxes in the community, and I was going to a private school. We didn't have hockey, and so I just played for them. So I came on to their squad. Well, let me back up a little bit. I'm going to back up a little bit. Something that happened to me in 7th grade. I got in some type of trouble, and my parents took me out of hockey. I was playing for a team called the Elmhurst Blades at the time. And I was besides myself because I was a pretty good player growing up. But when I hit like 6th, 7th grade, I became a pretty good player. You know what I mean? And because that's when I got aggressive and, you know, blah, 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 and started working off ice a little bit. And even back then, but I sat out, I think, a half a season, and it was the second half.
As punishment?
Yeah. Like they weren't backing down. And my parents didn't agree on much. You know what I mean? But they agreed on that. And that put a little learning lesson in my head as far as you got to, you know, produce on one end to get a reward. Because hockey was a reward for me. You know, I mean, it could be 6 a.m. I loved going to play. Still do. Mm-hmm. I still play with a bunch of old guys. You know what I mean? And but in 7th grade, I kind of learned a lesson, like a pretty good lesson, saying, "Hey, you don't just get given things in life. You know, it's been pretty easy up until now. I've been in trouble in this school trouble. You know what I mean? The one nun hated my guts. But anyways, that was probably rightfully deserved. Oh my God. Like, we had the funnest bunch of grade school guys, and you know a bunch of them, the Baileys, the McGuires, you know, they were maniacs. And my ushers, my dear friends. 7th grade, I wouldn't say it was a turning point for me, Frank, but in my own mind, I realized, you know, you have to put a shovel in the ground to get a hole. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I mean, I was bummed. So hanging around the house for 4 months, that's when hockey basically used to go from October till St. Patrick's Day. Now it's all year round. You know what I mean? And, but I learned a lesson then. So then we'll fast forward to sophomore year again, when I started playing hockey for Hinsdale Central. There was a gentleman on our team by the name of Jeff Jones, and he was an absolute stud. Played for Notre Dame, and I think he had a knee problem freshman or sophomore year. And he was a senior when I was a sophomore, and I was already a pretty cocky guy, I guess. And had longer hair, like a hockey hair. You know what I mean? You'd cut your hair in the front and let it grow in the back. And your mom would be like, what's going on here? You know? And so I remember the first week of practice. I already had a good buddy on the team. I already had some good buddies, actually, because you grow up playing hockey in neighborhoods with guys. And one of my good friends, Brian Guth, who's another Board of Trader, was a junior when I was a sophomore. And I started when I was a sophomore. And first week of practice, I don't know Jeff Jones, but I know of him. And he's the stud of Illinois, not only Hinsdale Central hockey team, right? True story. So the coach, for some reason, Fasano Jones. I'm like, okay, what's going on? I thought we were going to do.
He's a senior and you're a sophomore.
Correct. Yeah. That's a big difference.
Hell yeah.
14 or 15 to 17 or 18 is a big difference, especially in sports. Fasano, Jones. And we're both like, yeah, okay, what? Get on the line. Just us two. He goes down and back, and I beat him. Now, he was
a race, right? This is a
down and back. Yeah. I beat him, but he was a better player than I was. Probably at that point a way better player. We were different players. He wasn't more. I was what's called a mucker. I was a goal scorer too. That's a term in hockey. I mean, the missiles.
A mucker.
You send the guy in. I'm going into the corners. I'm going into any situation and trying to dig the puck out.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of pretty boys that I'm not saying Jonesy was a pretty boy, but he wore a white turtleneck under his outfit. He was
I'm just saying.
He was a great golfer, great guy. No, I'm saying he was just a Hinsdale guy.
I know, I got you.
But a great hockey player. But I was the guy, I'm going into any situation. I'm going to play defense, offense, whatever you put me on. And whatever you put me on, I'm going to try to score goals. Anyways, my brother Jimmy used to say, the fucking kid will shoot from the parking lot. So you have to think about that for a second. Yeah. And the parking lot is outside the building. Yeah. You know what I mean? So my brothers used to say that. I used to go to my brother Michael's and Joey's games on Sunday. I used to have to beg and plead to go to their games because they were like at 9, 10 at night. And I was like 6, 7, 8 years old. And my mom would be like, it would be like a fight. And Michael was always, come on, bring, because he wasn't going out drinking afterwards or anything. And, but anyway, so sophomore year, and I could tell that after that day, how you could tell stuff, you know what I mean? The team kind of looked at me a little differently. So
you earned some respect with that.
Well, I was brand new I didn't go to the school yet. So I knew guys from the Catholic school, but you knew guys growing up in Hinsdale too. And the hockey community it's a pretty small community back then. It really is. It's an expensive sport. And, like anything else, it is a community. I mean, if you, guys that I played hockey with in second grade, I'm still talking to them, and a lot of us are like-minded. They're all still out skating and, which is great. But so anyways, sophomore year was a pretty good year. And, so in comes another new group. I had my Bennett, St. Isaac's friends. I got Bennett friends. I got Nazareth friends. Now I got Hinsdale Central friends. And I'm not the shy guy of the group, So my high school, that sophomore year ended. We had a pretty good hockey year. We had a real good hockey year. I think we came in third in state. And if I'm correct, I scored a goal on the buzzer to go to the state championship. I think it might have been LT, but we were up north. I forget. I should remember who we were playing. Usually I'm good at that, but I didn't remember. And they disallowed the goal. And I wasn't that productive. I mean, I was productive off of the puck during that game. I always was productive, taking guys out. Hockey was a way that we don't have to get it out in hockey, but it's a different sport today. It's not to my liking.
They're all kind of D2 now, but whatever. That's another discussion.
I think the more you worry about head trauma, like if you're worrying about head trauma when you're playing hockey, you're going to get head trauma. If you're out there playing and the game I played, Frank, I would better the most of people, but I would get my clock cleaned. Not a lot, but it was coming. I'll never forget. I got 2 recognizable hits in my hockey. I didn't have a career, but in my hockey life, one was a Matt Egnatz from Hinsdale South. My junior year, we're playing them. This kid hit me square in the chest when I was a 16-year-old, 15, 16-year-old kid. I mean, I've never been hit like that in my life. And I told you the way we grew up with my brothers, the hardest I was ever hit was from my brothers. This kid laid me out. And I remember it took a second to get up, but the rule is if you're not bleeding, get off the ice. You're not laying there. Hockey's not a sport where people, and that's the way I taught my boys. My daughter even knows that, get up, there's no other way to live.
When you say hit, you're hit with a puck or he punched
by him.
You?
No, his body.
Oh, I got you. Collision.
Whatever he did to me, it was like, he didn't break my ribs or anything, but I felt everything like compact. And I think the wind got knocked out of me, and which always scares you, right? Because you're short of breath and that you don't know what's going on. And it takes a second or two. But I got up, but I went to the bench, and I'm like, holy fuck, who is this guy? And we became friends after that. You know how you respect the guy, you know what I mean? So another time was one of the very first game. My dad was basically a traveling salesman. Okay. So he wasn't around a lot. My mom drove us everywhere, and my dad would when he could. And so my dad, for some reason, took me to my first junior game. I was playing for the Chicago Jets at the time. They were out of Franklin Park. I was 15 years old and going against upwards of 20 and a half year olds. And I came across the crease, like do a little razzle dazzle something. Boom, laid me out, put me on Queer Street. That one I wasn't getting up from so quick. I mean, the birds were flying, everything. You know what I mean? So the first thing my dad says to me after the game, right? I went to the bench. I sat there, and I couldn't tell you whether it was in the first, second, or third period, but I did play the rest of the game. And then you shower up and come out, and we were in this rink, Carroll Stream, which was an upper level, lower level rink, and the locker rooms were on the lower level. So the parents would wait up here for the kids to come out, right? I think the upper level was street level, if I remember. I haven't been in there in 100 years, but it was the same guy that owns Dick Glassford that owns Downers Grove Rink, which is now for sale, by the way. So my dad, right, I'm coming out like this and, probably had my concussion, whatever, but there was no such thing back then. My dad's like, you got to keep your head up with the big boys here. Not like, how you
You
doing?
okay?
Are you all right? Hey, here's let's go to lunch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh my God. So, yeah. So that was a lesson for me too. And that was a lesson to keep your head up because I was playing with the real guys now. We'll get to senior year of high school. Well, I transferred into Hinsdale Central beginning of junior year. And I took I took 3 classes my first semester. So like I was off of school at like 10 o'clock every morning. And then I had like 1 in the afternoon. And Hinsdale Central had this lunch. It was the craziest thing to me. They had a lunch that was like, I want to say 2 hours long. But it was supposed to be split up into like 3 divisions, like this group goes for 45 minutes, then another 45, then another 45. But I had the whole lunch off, So public school was an eye awakening for me. So I'm a junior and, you're out having fun. You're drinking beer on the weekends and, playing hockey, chasing girls, all the normal stuff. And so I figure out, somebody told me or something that at Hinsdale Central, you could have 9 unexcused absences before they'll contact your parents on the 10th. Now that could be taking a morning class off, and then coming at the second period or whatever your schedule is, right? So it was like, I didn't go to school on Fridays. Basically, we'd be out driving. I mean, a buddy of mine, way worse. We'd be having full-blown parties before school. I shouldn't be saying this, but I mean, we'd go to school having, 15 beers in us. My junior year, I went out with a buddy of mine, Nick Zagoni, Kenny Corcoran, and I don't mean, they're not bad guys. They were just with me. Blame everything on me. Put everything on me.
Okay.
Right?
Disclaimer.
But we were out with a couple girls and we're driving. All of a sudden we're like in Morris, and this is 1981. Even here was cornfields where we're sitting, right? But we're like way out and we're lost and there's no phones and we got to get back. It was like finals and everybody had to get back for a certain final that afternoon. And we got lost and I think we missed our final. And Nick Zagoni still holds that against. He still brings that up because he was a student of my caliber. So, we needed to be at those finals, but we did graduate and, but that 9 absence rule. So anyways, it caught up to me, the 9 absences, right? My dad gets something in the mail and he's like, what the fuck is this? And I'm going through life, Frank. I'm not counting my absences, anything like that. I'm like, what are you talking? And why are these all on, he put the pencil down to the paper and he looked at the dates and backed them up. And they were all Fridays. He's like, what the fuck are you doing on Fridays? I'm like, well, and, I'm sure I said some bullshit or whatever, but, I didn't get out of that one either, So, but that's when my dad became uber busy in business. He had bought a company called Lloyd J. Harris Pie Company. And they were,
I remember them.
Yep. He bought them. And there's a story to that going back to like 1945 or something. My grandfather was the president of their company, but it was a different company at the time. It's called like Sunkist or something. And he worked for the Harris brothers, but he was the president of the company. My grandfather was a badass. So at some point when his 2 sons became of age, he asked them if they could come to work for him. And they said no.
One being your dad.
One being my dad, because my dad had a brother Larry and a sister Eileen. Super nice lady. My grandfather, I guess, I wasn't privy, put that in the, in the lock. And then, basically started a company called Fasano and Sons. And then as the story goes, I wasn't there. Somebody came to my grandfather and said, "Hey, this gentleman at whatever pie company it was an actual pie manufacturing facility, is not paying his flour bill, or he's behind or whatever." So my grandfather went over and had a little talk with him. I worked out a deal. Next thing you know, Fasano Pie Company was born.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and then a year later, bigger building down the street, which became the main building. But anyway, so I'm digressing. But so come to 82-ish. I'm a senior.
You graduated in 82?
82.
Me too.
Yep. Luckily, by the skin of my teeth. Oh my God. I had to go to summer school. Junior year, I went to summer school up in, I was a River Valley Mustang in Michigan, in Bridgman, Michigan, because my mom wasn't staying home and nobody wanted to watch me at home, because my dad was traveling. Okay, so back to that point. In about 80-ish, 81, my father bought that company because that was going to put him in we were already in the frozen food business, but they were all frozen. And I don't know the technicals of it because I wasn't running the plant or anything like that. But that put national. That exposed my dad to the whole West Coast. So I think, excuse me, again, as the story goes, they were losing about $100,000 a month when my dad bought them. And within like 14 months, he turned it into paying the bills. But he had a monster note at I remember hearing around the family table, because that's when Joey and Michael were heavily involved in the business. Michael was running the whole production in Chicago, and Joey was the national account manager.
Wow.
So Joey was flying around the country selling pies, to Kroger's and Winn-Dixie's and, all the California store. I mean, he flew around the country and competed with all the bigger companies. So, that was into play. So I'm sure that put a ton of stress on my dad, right? And then my parents were going through a divorce at the same time, and you know how things work. So, balance, right? So, the family life was a little. I wouldn't say we were always secure. There was no worry about, hey, we're going to lose a house or something like that, right? But, the not having a mom and a dad, even though dad was gone all the time, it was weird, you know what I mean? So I was like, my junior summer, my parents had built a beautiful home in Grand Beach. Like I said, we moved out of the one in 75 and we moved into the new one was being built, and my mom moved us in the day of school, June of 76, with no carpet. She only had them, the house wasn't finished yet. She had them carpet the bedrooms, right? So they were still working on it all summer, but we were living there because she loved Grand Beach. And she probably wanted to get away from my dad, So, so I remember that summer she pulled me into her bedroom. I had some friends over at the, like usual. We had a pool in the backyard. It was like Wally World. Hey kids, what do you want? Anything. I'm cooking, or I already have this cooked. Here, come on up. Or there's ham in the fridge, whatever. So she pulled me in her bedroom and said, I want to tell you that me and your father are getting divorced. And that I'm like, one thing, how you regret some things you say, but I was a kid. I was 17 years old, I think. I'm like, what am I going to tell my friends, Mom? Not thinking, what is she going to tell her friends? But that's what I said. And I said it. And, I was always in my mom's corner. Always, because like I said at the very beginning of this podcast, she was my number one ultimate protector, and Michael was too, from the big bad bear. which was my dad. And, nobody knows why, whatever. I had a storied relationship with my father. He's passed away, so I'm not bad mouthing him. I'm just going to tell you facts. We didn't have a very good relationship, and, basically, in my opinion, and a lot of others, he would bully me. We'd be sitting at a dinner table and there was always the fucking ribs. You know what I mean? Hey, blah, 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 school, this, that, whatever. But he could never rib me about sports. He was always, never really acknowledge it, but always, my mom was at every game, every practice. But when my dad would come see me play, he'd be like, what the fuck? Where did this kid come from?
I just want to do a quick comparison because there is something to birth order where you are in the birth order and you were the number 6 of 7 and your father was a man's man and your father was a father for boys. This is my opinion only. And he had Joe and Michael. They were like his right hands. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So he probably had a certain expectation. This reminds me of the story of my mother because she was number 9 of 10 in a family of mostly boys. She was only one of 2 girls. Yeah. And her father, he revered the first 2 boys. They were like his right hands, but
Well, Joey was definitely he'll be listening to this when we put it out, but he was Joe Jr.
He was the right hand of the father.
He was Joe the third.
Yep. So, I think your dad might have looked at, I'm just speculating because of my mom.
Yeah, sure.
Your dad might have looked at you with kind of the same expectations that of his older sons, and you were born in a different world. Your whole scenario was different than them. You know what I mean? They had probably a little more condensed of a childhood than you did. They had to grow up a little faster because of where your dad was in his business and all that stuff.
Sure. He was always doing pretty well, though. I mean,
yeah. But anyway, just an observation to me. But
I'm not defending him, certainly. But yeah, and I was I was a handful.
Still are, my friend. So
I was a lunatic, without being in an insane asylum. I mean, I was crazy. But like I said, not criminal crazy, but just crazy shit, A lot of drinking and driving and crazy.
You're a risk taker, brother. You thrive on it, whatever it is.
There's no doubt about that.
Trading, whatever it is.
And that's the way I played hockey too.
And golf. I played golf with you too. You don't hold back. There's no laying up on Peter Fasano's game in golf.
I used to be pretty good at golf.
I know. I played with you before.
I haven't. You played the one day you played with me. I ended up wasn't I laying on your kitchen floor? Hugging your dog at one point?
Yeah, after you flipped the cart over while we were playing golf.
I technically didn't flip it. I rectified that situation.
That was funny.
Well, flipping a golf cart is nothing. We grew up on golf carts in Grand Beach. You'd like flip a cart a day.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, so I was the one that got out of the cart and took care of the green, the guy.
You handled it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But anyways, thank you for inviting me that day. Though I don't know if that worked out or didn't work out for you.
Okay. But that's another whole podcast. Right there.
I remember Jimmy when he heard that story. He was all pissed off. So, anyways, we go to senior year. Got out of school with the skin of my teeth, and my dad's business is doing good at that time. Doing good. And senior summer, I trained the coach from the College of DuPage recruited me. Actually, the athletic director, and they were 2 years off on national championship, which my cousin Johnny played on, and another guy that I know. Actually, a couple people that I know, but Johnny Mannion was a hell of my first cousin, hell of a hockey player. Different style than me. He was a smooth skater, and had a real heavy shot. Real heavy. That's a powerful shot in hockey. And so trained with them all summer, rekindled with a couple of knuckleheads who I used to play like grade school hockey with, who are now playing for COD. And we trained all summer. And I think we got 2 games into the season. Herb Salzberg was his name. Big, heavy guy. He's the athletic director. Never came to the rink, never once. Came to the rink. We're at Downers Grove. And we'd gotten in a little trouble a few weeks earlier. A couple guys and I in the hockey team. Actually, one of the guys on the hockey team told on us. We had a party drinking and smoking, whatever, And I won't mention his name, but he was a goalie. So it won't be tough for the guys to figure out. Told on us, like told the coach. Right? And you don't do that. We weren't hurting anybody but ourselves, And so we had a little run-in with the coach, Gino, and pulled me aside. Hey, you can't be doing, blah, blah, blah. We don't care what you do. Just don't be doing it in public or whatever. So Herb Salzberg comes to the rink, and it was after practice. And I'm down to, I always wore long sleeve shirts under my equipment. And so I think I still had my upper equipment was gone, and I was just untying my skates or whatever. Fasano, I want to see you in the lobby. And everybody's like, what the fuck did you do now? And I didn't even know what I did. So he pulls me out in the lobby and he starts poking. This is the athletic director for COD. Starts poking me in the chest. And he's like, the least you could have, after all I did for you the last 6 months, the least you could have done was register for school. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I remember when I was in line to register for school, I didn't have my wallet on me. And I registered under my buddy's name, Steve Hipskin, who's still a great buddy of mine today. So there's no record of me at the school. I'm going to classes and everything, a few of them at the time. So this story is part of my future because I got kicked off the hockey team right then. And he's like, he was like pissed. He's like, we're going to have to play a man down. And I'm like, thinking like a Fasano. I'm like, well, can't you just put it into the system? He's like, no, the rosters are already in and this and that. And, there's computers now and stuff. So anyways, hockey career done in a second. Not technically done, but in my eyes, right? I'm an 18-year-old guy. It's December of 82. And I'm going to come home and tell my dad that I just got kicked off the hockey team. Well, what are you talking about? Well, I technically not registered at school either. So that wasn't going to go well. So I just told him I don't want to go to school anymore. I think whatever story I told him, I'm sure there was a story. And I said, Dad, I think I want to go into the business world. You know what I mean? And my dad was a no bullshit guy. He's like, man, what the fuck are you going to, He didn't swear a lot. I'm exaggerating. But, he was a classy guy. Like even around the house, he'd be wearing, I never saw my dad in a pair of jeans till he was like 70.
I just want to pause you on your dad. Yeah. I met your dad only one time, I believe. It was at Jimmy's course. Was it Edgewood?
Yeah, our course.
Yeah, so that was, it probably was a putts for Peter, or maybe I was just playing a round of golf with Jimmy. He walked me up to your dad, and I shook your dad's hand. He was well-dressed. And in the time I was milling around there, I don't know how many people went up to him and shook his hand and said hello. You could just tell the guy, your dad was a man of gravitas. People respected him.
He was a man about town for sure.
Yeah, he was a force, let's put it that way.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. In a lot of different ways. But anyway, so I had to navigate that, right? And we're living in Hinsdale, and the parents are getting divorced. A lot of shit's going on, right? Not in my world, not in Peter's world. I'm steady as she goes. But I was bummed out about the hockey thing. And so I remember I called up either Mike Shannon or Jack Shannon, which Jack for sure. Mm-hmm. Jack well. Might have been Mike. Not taking any.
Are they brothers?
Yes, they're brothers, and they're twins.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, they're September. My mom's birthday is September 29th, And I want to say theirs is like the 28th or the 30th. But anyways, good guys. Grand Beach guys, Beverly guys, Grand Beach guys. So I've known those guys. They were Michael and Joey's age and Helen. So I've known those guys. They've been lugging me around since, I was 0. So, and Jack married Christine Briata, was a great friend of our families, still is, and another Grand Beacher. And so I called them up, whichever one. I think it might have been Mike, because Mike, they both were affiliated with Hinsdale, or maybe the whole family was affiliated with Hinsdale Commodities. And so January 3rd, 1983 is when I started for Hinsdale Commodities. And I was at the Merc running orders out of the meat desk. And, so I'm go on the floor and I'm like, what is going on here? Now, I grew up in Grand Beach.
Was this your first job?
No. I had some jobs.
Okay. I wasn't sure.
I worked at the bakery. I had a job at a car dealership. And, my dad didn't, for the younger kids, he wanted us to enjoy our childhood.
That's pretty cool.
And he had the luxury of doing that. He's like, you know what? You're going to be working for the rest of your life. This is the time you should have fun. So as much of a hard ass as he was a good guy. Very fair. I don't think he ever fired an employee. And he had probably thousands of employees, not at once, but he had 500 employees at once. So he definitely had many thousands. He put many kids through college.
You're running now.
I'm running. And
you remember what they were paying you?
$125 a week, which wasn't bad, because Kevin Rooney was like, Jimmy Fasano came a little after me, I think, and he was working for Chicago for the Marzano brothers, Jim and Joe, who are great guys. Excuse me, Joe and Mike. Jim and Joe are my brothers.
Yeah, I remember Joe. So.
Yeah, Joe was you remember Joe from the later days. Mike was different, like night and day from Joe. Joe was a maniac. Kevin Rooney was down there. You remember Kev?
Of course.
And this is when Kev was, 240. Big
really?
Boy, big boy. Kev was a clubber. He was a lean and mean. Well, he was a different guy when you met him. But Kev was a bouncer and loved to tear it up.
I heard he was a brawler. Chris Daly,
just like
told me he saw him brawling sometime, and the guy was a maniac.
He was. Big guy, too. He was a good golfer in his day, too. Another Grand Beacher, Beverly guy. So,
very incestuous with you, Grand Beach.
It is.
That's all I'm saying. So,
if you only knew the half of it,
okay.
And we'll get to some of it. This is 1983, so I start running orders, blah blah, and I kind of figure out. I grew up with the Murray family. Bobby, Tommy were my age, and Michael, and 13 kids.
Cool.
And the father was a very successful corn broker. Like, they called him King Corn. He was the biggest guy over there, and a wonderful guy, just a great guy. So, and the whole family is great. So I start running orders at the Merc, and I catch on to things pretty quick, and I start figuring out that if I run order, Jack was in a different arena. He was over in the S&Ps. I didn't run orders to the S&Ps, not yet. So I figured out if Mike's standing around and I get I'm looking at these, first of all, I'm looking at these numbers on a piece of paper. And I'm like, what the fuck is this stuff? And then you'd bring a July order to a June contract or something. They, fuck it, blah, 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 blah. And you'd be like, me, I'd be like, go fuck yourself, not knowing that it's a system, the severity of it, right? If you fill a different contract, that's a big money thing. And so I figured out that I could start running Mike orders, because he was like a guy, I think he worked for an individual guy that was a big shot at Hinsdale, and he would fill his orders. But when I got like a 200...
Mike Marzano.
Mike Shannon.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I think his badge was MDS. So I figured out, this is my buddy. This is my older brother, basically, right? Then I could start bringing him orders, right? So I start bringing him like, in the belly pit or somewhere. I'd be looking for him. I'd have a market order, like a huge belly market order. And I'd go looking for him and bring him an order for like another pit, another meat pit, hogs, bellies, whatever they were, And so I got caught doing it. Mike didn't get any trouble because he had an affiliation with Hinsdale, But my boss is like, what are you doing? Why are you giving, I never told that to Mike, but, and I, so I figured out the game a little bit, that there's money to be made here, right? So I worked for Hinsdale, and then I asked for a transfer over to the Board of Trade. And
why'd you do that?
Because I like the Murrays. That's the only way I could put it. And there was the Stone family. The gentleman that bought my parents' house in Grand Beach was a Board of Trader.
Okay.
And there was other Board of Traders in Grand Beach. It was different at the Board of Trade, which, they were night and day exchanges, as it turns out. So with the people and, the goings on and the not goings on. And I just felt comfortable. So I went over there, started running orders. And then I became a phone clerk for a little while, and I didn't like the phone clerk. So Tony Fasano was working for this guy by the name of Mark Gold and Steve, you know him. Or maybe it was Steve Gold and Mark something.
Where's Tony in the birth order? So it goes Joe, Michael.
Joe, Helen, Michael, Tony.
Okay.
Jimmy, Peter. They were looking for a phone clerk at the Merc in the S&Ps. And I went to work for them, and it was a nice job at the time. I think it was like $300 a week or something, step up. And I was dealing with one customer. So there was no yelling and screaming, hey, am I Bob? They're like, they'd pick up the phone. It was a retail shop. Buy 5 and hang up or whatever, right? Buy 10, sell 4. It was a small operation, but it started getting bigger. And I was with them for a short time, and Jack was in the S&P pit. Now, I was a clerk in the S&P pit. So I'd be flagging these people down, and Jack's group was right next door. So I started flashing orders to them, right? To Jack's group, because they were watching me. And I could, I was young, but I could figure stuff out.
Was Jack filling or was Jack
Jack
clerking?
was filling. Jack was the man. So I'm like, great. I'll give Jack business. Why wouldn't I? He's my older brother, basically. They found out, or
same deal as before.
Same exact deal. But it's no big deal in my future to come. It was a learning experience. And my defense is these people aren't watching me.
Right.
But you have to use them. It was one of those.
Yep. We know how that works too.
I'm like, what? Here's what I said as like a 19-year-old boy. I'm like, you're going to tell me that your customer is going to suffer because you have to use these brokers? Yes. Because it was all an inside job.
Mm-hmm.
And I was disgusted with that even as a young man. So got fired from there. Got hired First Boston over in
was that 250?
Well, they were 355 at the board, I think.
Okay.
I think you're right. They were 250 at the Merc. But I had a short stint at the Merc. Because I blew through a few jobs at the beginning. First Boston, and this is the third. First Boston, I did okay. A gentleman by the name of Peter Gibbs was my boss, and Jimmy Gannon and Rich Duffy and Frank Goldak. You probably know all of them.
I don't know.
Frank was a currency guy, the nicest guy in the world, and would take all the time in the world to explain anything it needed to be explained.
Nice.
I went to work for they were knuckleheads. Peter Gibbs, they used to just give me shit. It was like they did their jobs, believe me, but the desk was out of control. And then I was running orders at the beginning just to the euros, right? But then it all became ARB, like right then, So I would run some orders to the other side of the pit or whatever, right? And then they put me into the spread, the TED spread with the broker. And I forget who the broker, it might have been Peter Burgess. Do you remember Peter Burgess?
I do.
He was an early guy. Mm-hmm. And that's when they were making the transformation from T-bills to euros. And I don't know the dates, Frank, but it in that area. So that's where I learned to arb this way, right? And they were patient with me because I worked for them. Peter Gibbs was my boss. So they'd flash something in. They'd be like, hey, you dumb fuck. This is what, I'd be like, like a brand new guy, right? And, but the broker was super nice because he knew I wasn't on his payroll, but I was helping him, right? And he needed help at the time because I guess the TED spread was growing at the time, or, because the euros were coming into play.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So then I got transferred over to the currencies. And I was put on the option desk. So I was doing, British pound options, yen options, and blah, 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 blah. Well, there was another Fasano friend in there, Keith Felsich, if you remember him.
I don't know him.
But anyways, I filled an order backwards one day. Or I didn't fill it. I executed it, and he filled it. You
put it in backwards, and then he filled it.
It was 100% my fault.
Okay, gotcha.
And I knew it right away, and I wasn't your typical desk guy that tried to blame it on it. I went right up to the broker. I'm like, hey, I did this backwards because I didn't understand what an option was. I had no clue when they put me over there, and everybody was cool about it, and this and that. But I had a meeting with Preston Appleby III, who was in charge of First Boston, Chicago. And I'm sitting in his office, and I was going to ask for a raise. And he goes, Pete, I think it's about time that we split our ways.
Oh, wow. You're going to go ask for a raise.
I'm looking for a raise, and I get fired. So I'm like, son of a, whatever. And I don't take things that hard sometimes. And you learn some lessons. So I heard this gentleman by the name of Tom O'Halloran in the 10-year note pit was hiring. And it was an ARB clerk. And I went over, I forget who recommended me. It was Board of Trade. And one of the first things out of his mouth is, I hear you're not too aggressive, to me. And I'm like, really? I go, put me on the step, and I'll outwork anybody up there. And he was a big, flat-footed Irish cop. That's what he was. He was an ex-cop, and now he's a Mongo broker in the 10-year note pit, which was the real deal back then. Guess who's his biggest customer? First Boston. Right? So I had Dave Duffy. Do you remember Dave Duffy?
No.
Southside guy, blonde-haired guy.
I don't think so.
Well, super nice guy, but at work, he was a bear. So I got put on these guys. And there was a girl at the desk that you couldn't handle her. I mean, there's nobody that could put up with the pressure that she put on. So I would get in like altercations with these people, and my bosses knew it, and they would just be like, hey, take it easy, But that's Frank. We were 15 feet away from him at the time. It was a little smaller, more intimate exchange, right? That's when ARB was becoming big and they started building layers and this and that. But that was just at the beginning. Everything was basically ground level, So you'd see a guy pop up, put whatever order in, disappear. So you better be right. But these people were right in front of me. And I handled them pretty well. For the temperament I had, I would blow my gasket sometimes. I'd be like, whatever. But one day, like I said, this girl was incorrigible, which means there's no dealing with her. So whatever she had going on outside of the building, she was bringing it directly to work. And I know she was getting pounded on. This guy, Peter Carpin, and of course, you know who Larry Fink is. Larry Fink was the big shot at First Boston at the time. And he had a huge losing 10-year position on. He lost over $100 million. We didn't know that at the time. It all came out later. But so in defense of these people, they had all that going on.
And I'll give one little more point of defense. For women, working down on the floor was brutal. Because what do you got, like a 20-to-1 ratio, men to women? And you had to be
easily,
tough.
Easily.
You had to be a tough woman to wear.
Well, they were tough, and they were a different breed of woman, if you know what it. And I'm not talking about the runners and stuff like that. And the trade clerks. I'm talking about the women on the desk. They were a different breed.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it at that. And I got another one in my story afterwards. But anyways, so that progressed. And at one point in time, my boss at the time, Tom O'Halloran, was a very political guy. So he would work like the mornings and then disappear. Fill his 2,000-3,000 contracts at the time at $2.50 or whatever they were getting paid, or more maybe at the time, and disappear. And so basically, my boss was John Lappy, who I still I see him weekly still, and super nice guy, Oak Park guy. So River Forest. Well, one day, Tom, they can hear everything that's going on between me and the desk. So I'd get a lot of this. And John's like a religious guy. He'd be like praying, Peter, shut up, shut up. But they knew I was doing a good job, obviously, because I was still there, right? And I was executing, and I was an animal. I would pick up everything. And so at one point, O'Halloran holds up his deck, and he's like, to the pit, who wants the first Boston business? I'm done. Holds up the deck.
This is your boss.
This is because he was getting heat from the desk too, and it was overpowering. I don't know what the word is. You know what I mean? We can all handle ourselves, but it was just day in and day out.
He had it.
7:20 to 2:00, everything, and they were getting execution. Believe me, O'Halloran and Lappy were some of the best brokers in the pit. And they had us on the outside, namely me, because I was trained on them and on Goldman. Okay? But First Boston was a giant back then. Within minutes, I'm talking minutes, Preston Appleby III is on the floor. I mean, my boss went over. I'll never forget this. He was a big guy. We had these like metal desks that were right in front of us. You had the built-up pit and then these desks.
Yep.
They had a metal front on them, like a black metal front. And then you have your phones up top and, blah, 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 on the other side. He went and kicked this metal desk. And I was laughing my ass off because I'm like, this is great, because finally he reacted, and it put not a hole in it, but put like a nice dent in it. He probably had a 12-foot. He was a big fat Irish slob, and so Preston Appleby III, like I said, he was in charge of First Boston. He was on the floor within minutes, begging O'Halloran, begging him to do the business. And they had it out. I wasn't part of that, but they were 15 or 20 feet away, and then it spilt into the hallway. And believe me, O'Halloran was going nuts. So I was proud of him for that. And so anyways, that progressed. My job with them. So that was probably from about 84-ish. I'm thinking, because I spent 2 or 3 years at the Merc. It was 84-ish, and then the idea of the 5-year pit came along. So I'm already on First Boston, right? I've been working for them for years now, and I say for them. I was working. Not with them. I was working for them. Basically. They were paying my salary. Mm-hmm. I start going around, learning from my father, and I start soliciting business. And I don't even have a seat yet, right? I'm going through the thing, blah, blah, blah. So I locked up some pretty good business. And it turns out that day one, they started using me. So I can say this now, but the first day of the 5-year pit, I did not have a badge. I had a badge, but I did not have a FOMC. What's a federal license? A brokerage license. But what's the technical name for that?
I don't know what they call it, but let me backtrack it. You were in one pit, and then who was the broker for you going into the 5-year pit now?
Me. It was a brand new pit.
So you went and solicited business for this new pit.
For myself.
For yourself.
Yes.
But were you still working for the other guy or no?
At the time, yes. 100%.
Okay. So what was he backing you? How did that work?
No, he didn't back me. His brother-in-law, Terry Cullerton, who was a dear friend of mine, he's passed away, but he was one of the original bond traders, like one of the original big boys. And story goes that when he would walk on the floor, the bonds would break like 6 to 10 ticks.
Just him walking on the floor.
Correct.
Wow.
So he was one of the original big boys, along with the big guys like Jay Nolan and guys like the bond guys were a different breed. You know what I mean? But I was over in the 10 years. So when that bond pit would move, you could feel it. You could feel whether it was going up or down.
Is that the pit that Baldwin was in?
Correct.
Okay.
And I didn't know Baldwin. I knew him. Hi, how are you? Type of deal. But, he was a very big player. Scotty Ryan was a big player. Steve Lawrence, Charlie DeFrancesca, monster. And David Ryan was a huge broker. These guys, Dragomuller, these guys were players. They were cowboys.
Their reputation came to the Merc. We all like to think our exchange is the best. The board guys think the board and the Merc.
Well, don't forget I had brothers there when I was.
When you talk about the bond pit that's the pinnacle of players.
And it moved, Frank, like, I don't care if you're in S&Ps, whatever, that bond pit moved. I've told you these stories before about the quality of broker at the Board of Trade. We won't get into that.
Yep.
And the mercantile, different.
Yeah.
Just A League and B League.
I could tell you, I can understand that because a lot of these brokers in the Merc, they had to have their bagmen in front of them because they couldn't count and they couldn't get their orders filled.
I won't get into that.
Yeah, but anyway, so now we'll go back to the 5-year pit now.
Yeah,
so you're soliciting business for you.
Correct.
You're getting badged up, which means you can fill orders soon, right?
Yes. So Terry Cullerton signed my papers. I'll never forget my other boss, John Lappy, who I still see. I'm like, what the fuck do you put on your application for your net worth? I'm worth $73 at the time, and probably I bought a new Nissan Sentra.
Yeah, so you're debit, right?
There's no doubt I was debit, and I'm drinking my salaries on Fridays and Saturdays. He's like, just put down you have a couple of family Persian rugs and stuff like that, and put like $10,000 here and there. So I did, and they didn't even budge, But so I went to my meeting. Your Board of Trade meeting before the membership. And this one jagoff goes to me, goes, O'Halloran, my initial boss had a lot of backing, but he had a lot of guys that hated him, right? Because he was on on every committee, So one guy, I forget it, I should remember his name, but it's no big deal. He's like, you can't go running back to O'Halloran when this doesn't work. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, gee, you're a positive fucking guy. And this is to stamp my papers to get accepted at, the Board of Trade, right? As a member. That's the last step, right? So I'm like, whatever. But I understood it because I worked for O'Halloran and people used to come up on a daily basis. And he'd be, he was probably 6'2" to begin with, but he'd be 4 feet up, and these people would be yelling up at him. Well, why'd you do that? But different members, and because a pit got changed, or how it goes. You know what I mean? So I saw it for the years that I worked for him. So, anyways, May 20th, 1988 comes, and it's the opening day for the 5-year no pit. And it's packed. We also got a permit, so we got a huge break. And we didn't have to rent the big seat. We got a 5-year permit because they wanted the thing to succeed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was like $5,000 a year, Frank.
Which is nothing.
Correct. Versus like $3,300 a month, $3,500 a month at the time for the AM, which is what you needed to trade financials. Starts. And it's like, I don't have to tell you about a crowded pit.
And people are pushing and shoving for position. It's mayhem,
brand
right?
new. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do this business. You're going to do that business. So I don't have any money. I'm in there. I got these people business, right? I'm clerking as a first-time broker, clerking and filling.
You're getting your own order, and then you're turning into the pit, and you're filling the order, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And trying to keep an eye on everybody. So anyways, we'll just fast forward. That worked out very well for me. I think I went from making like $400 a week the first month. The first full month, we started on the 20th, but the first full month, like in June.
In June, yeah.
I think I made 29 grand.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, was that just filling or was it filling and trading?
Well, we're not to trading yet.
Okay. Okay.
We're not to trading yet.
You had to be out of your mind.
I was great. I loved it. Absolutely. Would practice at home, yelling and screaming. If you're anywhere where there's a pool, go underwater, yell underwater. I loved it. And my whole life was around that now because you go out with guys from work and be talking about, you'd remember every single trade from the day and, blah, blah, blah. So, after the first month, I started hiring people. Okay. And the pit, was doing pretty well. And we had our ups and downs. We were competing with the New York 5-year pit that just opened against us. And you know how much New Yorkers hate us, right? The board and the Merc, they hated us, but they had to use us. So, here's where my trading comes in. Rob Moore, which I should have mentioned his name earlier, huge bond trader. The board of trade would go around to people and say, hey, can you put an hour into the 5-year pit and go in there and scalp a little,
Just to add liquidity.
Exactly. Because, if a guy like Rob Moore comes in and loses 100 ticks, it's no big deal, right? And they know that, and he knows that. And we're all for the board of trade. Some guys came through. So Rob comes in one day, and I don't know anything about trading. I know a little bit about trading. One of my good friends at the time is Keith Burchett, who I got a full chapter on him.
Great guy, legend.
We'll get into him.
Yeah.
Rob Moore comes in one day, and Rob's like your typical bond trader. He's got I think at the time, big house in Lake Geneva, and golfer, and this and that. But he had the hair. He's like a tall guy. I think he's an ex-basketball player from like Marquette or something. So like the Merc, a lot of athletes. Big tall guy, just like Magnum PI type of guys, right? And what's here? And nobody say anything. And I kind of know Rob because I've been out with Rob a couple times, right? And he's like, hey, Pie Face. My badge was PF, and there was a couple of guys that used to call me Pie Face. A lot of guys didn't get it, but a lot of guys did. And hey, Pie Face, what are you doing? 3 bid at 4. I'll sell you 10, I'll buy 10. I'm like, fuck, I just made $312, 50 cents. You know what I mean? And then, but Rob, what are you doing? Putting it out to the market, not hiding anything. 3, 4, I'll sell you 10, I'll buy 10.
Yeah. And just so you people don't understand what happened right there is this big trader comes in the pit from a different pit and they want him to be in there just to get some order flow and liquidity. So when he's telling Peter, buy 10, sell you 10, he's buying 10 at this price and selling him 10 at this price and giving him an automatic winner. He's
Correct.
basically taking money out of his own pocket and saying, here, Peter, I'm going to give you a winning trade and do both sides at his loss.
And it looked at 20 contracts, which got bigger. All right. That added to the volume. We were worried about the daily volume and the open interest at the end of the day. And that was a big, because we all started brand new jobs and, there was a lot of veterans that were in there. And
so is that what your first trade? Was that your first trade or
I think
close to the beginning of your first trade?
I think it was my first trade because I vividly remember it, and you can't call that a trade. So then, Peter, what are you doing? Starts hitting me at 50-50, and I'm like, Rob, I'll sell you 50. But no. Keep it, right? I'm like, fuck, I just made 1,500.
You were offering to scratch it with him, right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, just to get the liquidity going, like you said.
Yeah. So, and Rob's like, don't worry, he could have made $300,000-400,000 that day.
Right.
Who knows? He was a monster bond trader. But still, he was in there, and I was the first one that did. So he would come in every once in a while. So then, my business just, we don't have to talk about specific numbers, but my business exploded like within 8 months. So now we're in like June or July.
You got to talk numbers a little bit. So you made 20-something grand your first full month in June.
Correct. And there wasn't another month after that was even close to that on the downside. All of a sudden you're putting zeros on that.
Understood.
Okay. And then it came to days where you put zeros on that. And then brackets. So anyways, I'm going to work and I'm fighting a fucking battle every day, as we all did. I got a pretty good established business within like 6 months. I had, one partner when I started off, I'm not going to mention any names because I don't like a lot of people, and they did what they did, and they could go fuck off, because it came to a point where it was people's jobs to steal business from me, which I didn't find out until after the fact, well after the fact. But anyways, so I'm building a business, and I'm building it inside of work and outside of work.
Could I ask you, at this time, like filling wise, how many are you filling in a day, on a good day?
On an average day, the first year or so, probably, I think to be honest, I went from a $29,000 month in, let's say, June, because May was a short one. And I think by January, I was doing well over 100.
Mm. Your brother Jimmy often talked about,
and it was hard,
your filling ability.
It was hard. We didn't use dupes. We used pencils.
Yeah. He said Peter would come here and he'd clean up.
Yeah.
He paid you a lot of respect.
I was by the time we got together, Frank, you and I was a much different person.
Yeah.
I was a 100% different person. I didn't have a lot of spirit. Let's just put it that way.
I understand.
So anyways, I would go in every day, like all of us. I'm not putting my story above anybody else's. I'm just telling you what it's my history. So I would not only execute these people's businesses to the best of my ability, which was above and beyond the call of duty. I would hold on to 1,000 lots, 2,000 lots.
And work them for them, right?
No, well, work them like for 2, 3, 4 ticks, not for a half a tick. Finally, I had this one guy from Prudential Base. He got big for a while. How some customers get big sometimes or whatever. You never know what's going on behind the scenes. It could be the same person from First Boston or Prudential Base or whatever, Goldman. So I finally went up to the desk, and this is when I was pretty well established, a couple years in. I'm like, listen, you're not doing your customer any favors by having a 3,000 lot sitting on your desk and you popping up and saying, hey, sell 300 or sell, 500 or, what's the bid? What's the bid? I go, put it in my hands. The public won't know. The pit won't know. And I'll work it for you all day if you want me to. Mm-hmm. Unless a lot of people, I don't know if you got this, Frank, they'd say, hey, this order has to be filled by 11:23. I got a lot of that. And I think it had to do with switches in the back rooms, because they were probably getting out of something and getting into something, and their margins, right? I think it had a lot, but it had to be out by a certain time. I got a lot of orders from that, like from Plaza, from Goldman, Chase. Chase did a lot of that stuff. I didn't question. said,
I got those too. And
I'll either get it done, I'll pound it out, or we'll work it for you,
And to your point, these guys at the desk are customers. They try to work the orders themselves, which was what you're saying. They have 2,000 to sell, and they'll pop their head up and they'll go sell 200. And, they're working the order themselves from there. They can't work the order better than us. We're in the trench, man.
I might not be watching, but I'm listening to everything that's going on in that pit. Everything. I could be out on the rail and I'm listening. I had a couple good things working for me that I learned early in life. Peripheral vision and listening were great qualities to have in sports. You could hear a guy coming, or and your peripheral is, if you don't have peripheral in hockey, you're gonna, get your block knocked off. So, anyways, we started progressing in business, and my brothers were growing right along with me, and Tony and I used to have some competitions. And we'd always compare numbers, right? And we'd always be comparing. I'd be like, fuck the Merc, because the bonds, like you said earlier, the bonds were the bonds. And it took a while for the Merc to catch up. But the Merc was a different type of business. The bonds were outrights. And the Merc's got all that volume from the spreaders, right? And from the overnight supply and blah, blah, blah. So we would have family, and that's when we were all hanging together. We're going out golfing, Frank, and you know how those days go. I mean, they were insane. You'd have 18 beers on the course. It doesn't matter what course you were at. I was mainly at Long Beach up in Indiana and Edgewood Valley here, and you have 18. Everybody, you get the 5-gallon mayonnaise buckets. And you tell the bartender to stuff them up, right, with ice, or I don't care if you're drinking vodka. Get 6 screwdrivers for the first round, and then you'd hit the halfway house and you'd load them up again, and we'd have fun, and we were always very respectful to we'd be having a blast, and very rarely get complaints. There'd be some stuffed shirts out there sometimes, but we'd be playing golf from 3 p.m. till 9 p.m. So there's not a lot of people out there in mid-evening,
right?
Which is the best time to play golf because all the wind dies down at dinner time. And you get that still air and you get the summer air and you got the swing juice going and you're betting.
Yeah, and you guys are all good players too. Even when you're tipsy,
yeah, we're all pretty good. I was usually, I hate to say this, but it's probably not a scientific fact. But my best scores were when I was hammered.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
Hammered.
That's John Daly says that, the golfer.
Well, I was no John Daly, but I could stand on a tee box and put a circle out there with my finger and tell you I'm going to hit it there. And it was always
Hockey and golf they're very compatible with each other. The hand-eye coordination of you handling a puck.
Correct.
Some of the farthest hitters I ever...
Golf is from here to here, if you ask me.
A good part of it is
all this other stuff. Keep your feet on the ground for the most part, and jump out of your shoes. Right, knees bent, left arm straight, head down.
And I just want to pause on Tony Fasano. So I was part of a group, and then I left the group to be completely independent. And Jimmy, your brother, stood next to me, and Tony was in the options pit, and those two guys. They were polished every day. Even when they dropped the tie requirement, they came in polished every day. And I admired that. And I go, well, now I'm on my own. I'm not part of the group. I came in every day polished just like them. I just thought
I was more
important.
I was more of a golf shirt guy. And I had a samurai tie in the office that I wore every day.
Mm-hmm. You're lucky that.
It was for a while. Then I cut the fucking thing in half. But I got into like Buddha dolls and like the big fat guys that I thought it was cool. I bought samurai swords and stuff. Yeah. I put them in my living room, and everybody's like, "What the fuck are these?" And statues and just stuff we go through. You
get superstitious, yeah. All right, so now we were at the part of the story where you would compare numbers with Tony.
Oh yeah. Tony and Jimmy. And Jimmy was doing, you guys were all doing well at the Merc, but I was out, you guys are fags, and, all that typical family stuff.
Yeah.
And all my buddies that worked, I had a ton of buddies that worked at the Merc. And it would be the same argument over and over again, but we'd argue about it for 6 hours and have fun, have fun. And just, that's the way the business was. I mean, you work your asses off during the day, and, you could be brawling with some guy in front of you, like literally chest to chest. And at 2:00, it was over. At least in my mind, it was, and the 5-year pit grew, and I was doing about 30% of the business.
Wow.
On a daily basis.
Which means you had a lot of people trying to backdoor you.
Everywhere. But I was a motherfucker. And they did, you know what I mean? Unbeknownst to me. I wasn't working a deal out with any customer. I'm going to get their order and I'm going to fill it.
Pure competition.
I'm not buying anybody at the desk. Now, I'll take anybody golfing or to dinner or to.
Yep.
They want to see the Stones. They want to go to, they want to see the Stones in London. Whatever, how many you need? Funny story about that. I got a call around Christmas time from Arbor. Mike Arbor, the son, Mr. Arbor.
Okay.
President of the Board of Trade. Like, Peter, can you come up and see me? Well, here's another thing that I did with Mr. Arbor. When I'm not into buying the seat yet, but I'll tell you this story. He calls me up and he's like, can you come up and see me for a minute? I'm like, this is like going back to the hockey coach thing or the athletic director. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? And I go up there. He's like, Peter, can't be giving envelopes out at Christmas because our policy is $50, to the customers. I'm giving envelopes like, I'm not thinking anything of it. These guys put literally millions of dollars in my pocket, right? I'm showing them my appreciation. So after that, it was like, I had a talk with everybody and I'm like, whatever you need or want during the year, just come up and ask. And if I could do it, I'll do it. And there were, plenty of trips to Kohler and, Atlanta.
It's business.
And
You got to do that.
I agree 100%.
But you did it after the fact. You earned the business and then you rewarded it. You didn't buy the business.
No.
And there are very few, I don't want to say that. There were many brokers who didn't do it our way. They did it the other way.
We didn't do kickbacks.
Yeah, I never did.
It's that wasn't my way of life.
And I lost business, and I'm sure you did when they approach you with the deal. Like, here's what we need.
I lost one customer, one only.
Oh, that's pretty good.
And it was a substantial customer. Well, I lost two customers. One was Goldman, but that's a different story. But this one was FEMAT. And the guy next to me, as I found out years later, you know what I mean, was working a deal out with him. And he had hired clerks to take my business away, which I found out 100 years later.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was inner workings, right? So we'll get to, 92, 3, 4 were fun. I'm looking to buy my seat in about 91 or 92, Frank, a couple of years into it, right? And I made the mistake in a trader's mentality of buying a house first. It wasn't a fancy house. It was a nice house. I bought it from my mother. It was in Willowbrook, very nice townhouse. But I should have bought my seat because they were about, 200 grandish at the time. And I should have done that first.
Were they charging you a dime a contract?
Sure. Yeah. And don't forget, I'm trading like a maniac now. So, because I got my taste of that. And I was doing very well on all fronts. So I was out drinking with Keith Burchett, who is without a doubt, one of the favorite men I've ever met in my entire life. To describe him in, any amount of phrases would be doing him an injustice. We'll just leave it at this. We're not going to leave it at this, but he is the most generous, loving, giving man I've ever met in my life.
And from my perspective, because I didn't know him like you, I just knew him watching him in the pit.
Animal.
As big as they get, but he had
Or
something
bigger.
that those other guys didn't. He just had
smarter.
a humble nature about him.
Yep.
He didn't have to puff his chest out with anybody. He just rocked and rolled, man. He would just, I don't even think I ever seen him lose his cool.
Well, he would get pissed at the brokers sometimes.
But he never,
Right.
he never bragged. The nicest guy. You wouldn't even know it. Like I talked to him many times. He
Walked down the
was
street
low
with his
key.
head down, and
Yeah.
if
a
you
monster.
ever out with him, which I was many times, and you tried to buy a round of drinks or something, you might get beat up. That's when he would get upset, is when you would I'll never forget a specific night. We were at the Chicago Athletic Association, and which was a great hangout and a good outlet for us. It was a dangerous outlet too. We'd all go play basketball and this and that. Well, I was pretty instrumental. I bring in about 75 members to the club. So I loved the place and I wanted to build it. So we had this boxing night. Not one, but this particular one. And I brought, whatever the proper terminology is, 2 tables, 30, 40 people, customers. I bring a couple of monster locals from the pit, and because I wanted them. This is the way I thought. Like, there's one gentleman in particular, I won't mention his name, but he was a giant local. Started off from a 2-lot trader. And I thought it was always smart. These people should get to know my customers, And I thought it was only good business for everybody. So then the customers would get a good idea, and they'd be, sometimes they'd come up to me, my customers, and they'd be like, how did you get this done? You sold 600 at 3 and we're 12 lower, so that's a great compliment to a guy like me and you. And I'm like, so-and-so took them, and I wasn't there to jam anything down anybody's throat. And if I gave somebody something that was bad, they were getting the good. They were getting the good too. One thing, I probably wasn't a favorite, and I know that for a fact, but I wasn't there to make friends, Frank. I just wasn't. I was there to do a service for my customers. Sit down at the pit, and the end of the day, have your clerk give you your numbers, and walk out of the building saying, I got more fucking money than I did yesterday. Right? That's the way I looked at it. In the beginning, I'd be like, I'm walking in, I'm richer than I was yesterday, which was, in my mind, was cool. So, but it was a complicated business for me. Okay. Cause I got trading involved with it. If I never would have traded, I would be, maybe not, but I would be a lot wealthier than I am today. You know what I mean? And it put me on pause in the business as well, meaning you're not coming back until you raise funds.
I just want to explain to the people out there, there's 2 income streams for Peter. He's buying and selling and making a commission on each contract. When he refers to his customers, there's people flashing orders into the pit, buy 500, sell 200, whatever. We make a commission on each transaction. Like it used to be $2 a contract, then it became $1, whatever.
Yeah.
So the more we buy and sell, that's the word fill we use, is meaning we're buying and selling for customers. We don't care which way the market goes. We're just making a commission off the transaction. But then trading means I'm buying and selling for myself, and I'm either making money or losing money based on, are my trades profitable or are they losing profit? You're talking about, if I would have just stayed on the commission, making the commission, buying and selling.
There was no need for me to ever trade a one lot.
Yeah.
Not even a 1 lot. I was a pretty big trader. I wanted to be like Keith Burchett. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. I wanted to act like him. I wanted to trade like him, and that was never going to happen. Well, it could have happened, but I didn't.
Can I ask, how old is Keith?
Keith is a year and a half older than me.
Okay.
So he was born in 62, I believe.
So he's right with us. He's not like he's
Yeah, and
They're
I
different.
originally met him when he was a younger guy, and he was already successful. I had known him for 10 years already, and I met him originally, I think, through Kevin Rooney. I did very well trading, and filling and making a ton of money, and there was a changing point. You know how busy we were in 1994. There was a gentleman in front of me that was saying that he had made more money than Greg Norman that month in June of 94. I think it was $980,000. Guy was a great local.
He made that in a month.
Correct. Yeah. But I was biting my tongue. Okay, because I had other numbers in my mind. So come that Friday, Unemployment Friday, was a come to Jesus moment for me.